Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Help for HD TV. Today, we have Londen on with us. And Londen, we're going to do multiple shows with Londen because Londen actually has lived through a whole life cycle of HD with Justin. And then, of course, they had children. She's a wealth of knowledge. We're really excited to have her on and talk to us. So this show is going to be about Justin. Tell us about how you met Justin.
So thank you guys for having me. I've been wanting to come on here for a while, first of all. So Justin and I met, actually I saw him when I was working at a gas station, believe it or not. And he had these really pretty blue eyes. And long story short, I got his number and then we started hanging out. And it all started from there. And it wasn't too long before we fell in love with each other. And then I was pregnant with Logan. To make a long story short.
So at that point, when you were first meeting Justin, as you guys started to evolve into a relationship and everything, did you know that HD impacted his family?
So he did tell me pretty early on that his mom died from Huntington's disease, and I had no idea what it was. And at the time, this was like 2002 or so. So there was like internet, but you had to go do some research at the library and stuff to do that. Wasn't easy just to pull it up on your phone and whatnot. So when I heard Huntington's disease, I'm just like, what's Huntington's disease? And he explained it to me a little bit. He told me it was possible that him or his sister could possibly have it. Justin had told me that when he used to go visit his mom in the nursing home, that there was a point where she didn't even recognize him or his sister, and it scared him. And they would still go and visit, but she just had no idea who he was. And he said, if I ever have Huntington's disease and if we ever have kids and I'm in that situation where I don't recognize my own kids, I don't want the kids to see me anymore. And it was something that I'll never forget, but of course, something I didn't really think was ever going to happen. And of course, years later it did. And so it sticks with me today. But thankfully, Justin always recognized his kids. So we're really grateful for that.
Yeah, definitely. So can you tell us, going back, when were a couple of moments, those aha moments that you go, Justin may have Huntington's disease?
Right now, looking back, Justin had symptoms from the moment I met him. I didn't know that at the time, but they did start to progress a little bit as we were together for 6 years or so. I started to research Huntington's disease a little bit. I did my research and was like, and this was again over years of time. And it was a few months actually before I broke up with him that we went to one of the kids' like little Christmas functions that they have at the school. We were decorating magnets and making things. I was standing there doing something with one of the kids and I looked over and I saw Justin talking to the DARE officer. And I was like thinking, what is he talking to what's he over there talking to that guy for? That's just weird. But the look on Justin's face was like, he was concerned about something. So I'm like, hold on. And I walked over and I said, what's going on? And his name was Kip. I'm just going to call him out. His name was Kip, the DARE officer. Okay. And Kip says, he goes, what's he on? I said, excuse me? What do you mean? What is he on? He goes, I smell alcohol on his breath. And even saying it now, like my heart just dropped. And I was like, how dare you? I couldn't believe it, but I also knew what he was thinking and why he thought that. And it was because Justin had Huntington's disease and he was starting to show symptoms that not only now I'd noticed, but the public noticed, and they were wondering what was wrong with him. And at this point, Justin was really starting to lose jobs a lot too, just from being clumsy and things. He did construction, and you can't be clumsy with construction. So there's also another situation. Justin and I had broken up, but we were still very close, and we only lived down the street from one another. He started living with his parents, and I had a house right down the street. And I remember this one time, the second time it happened, shortly after he was diagnosed, he took the kids for a walk, and he called me when he got home and said that the cops, or actually I think the kids might have called me. Everybody was freaking out because they were like, what the heck? Dad wasn't doing anything. But yeah, a cop stopped and asked what Justin was doing with these kids. And he had to explain to him, like, these are my kids. I don't know if the cop just assumed that Justin maybe kidnapped them, and they asked my kids if they were okay. Nothing happened. Justin didn't get arrested, but it was still like very offensive. And of course, nobody even knows what Huntington's disease is. One of the One of the worst times that this ever happened was when Justin was in later stages of HD. This was a point where he had moved to Gillette, Wyoming, and he was living in a nursing home near us so that he could be closer to the kids. And when he was living at the nursing home, before he was in a wheelchair, because he was not in a wheelchair for the first 2 years that he was in the nursing home, then we could transport him. So we'd pick him up and we'd take him places. On Father's Day, my husband and I, we picked Justin up with the kids and we took Justin to the fishing lake park. Justin loves fishing. So we're at the fishing lake park and it's a beautiful day and we need more bait. So we're like, shoot, okay, you guys stay here. They're with their dad. Me and Chris went to Walmart. We'll be right back. We get to Walmart and as we're there, one of the kids calls and says the cops were just there and that they were questioning Justin and they were again questioning the kids and making sure the kids were okay. And it's just really sad that he has to remember a Father's Day like that. People can't just be educated. And I wish that people could just say the words, I have Huntington's disease, and someone would understand what that means.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's traumatizing being a child of somebody who has Huntington's without the world knowing, for talking from personal experience, just knowing that your mom is sick and people are looking at her and talking to her differently and judging and things like that. It can be traumatizing for a kid if no one knows what's going on. So that must have been really hard for the whole family. And it's so common. Unfortunately, it's so common. But like you said, the more we can get the word out there about HD and the more people who can learn about it, the better. Yep, so exactly. I think we're doing our thing here. I think
we're getting it, girl.
Justin would be proud.
Yes, he would.
So what were some of Justin's biggest challenges through his HD journey?
If we're talking in the beginning, the earliest things were losing jobs. He would just say things like they just laid me off, because construction jobs can be quick jobs. It depends on what you do. He built houses mostly, but yeah, so losing jobs and stuff like that was some of the early things. And then just the clumsiness. He was just clumsy.
So you mentioned a lot of Justin's clumsiness. Was this something that he would just do throughout the day? Was he having movements like people in the community call it chorea? Was he having involuntary movements, or was it just something that he had trouble with coordination, or both?
So the clumsiness really at first was more so he looked like maybe he was just a little bit drunk, just a little step off here, little step off there. But another thing he would do is he had a lot of facial movements, and he had done this from the day I met him. And that's why when I look back, I'm like, oh, that was chorea. So he had a labret piercing right here in his chin, and he also had his tongue pierced. Okay. He was Fendi. Again, this is why I was so attracted to him. Anyway, so he had these piercings, and anyway, he would play with them. He would go, and I know that looks really weird. Sorry to act that out for you guys, but he would do this. It was like an obsessive thing that he would constantly do. And there are some other movements that like almost like a tick, but it was a chorea thing. It was a chorea movement. And then he would do little jerks here and there, but it was something that I didn't realize was Huntington's disease at the time. But again, all of it just got worse and worse. His speech wasn't bad at all. His speech didn't get bad till later. But as far as the clumsiness and chorea, yeah. Justin's movements got so bad when he was in the wheelchair. So he would move, and he had rubbed a sore in his elbow that he had to have surgery on, I think 3 times. Because I was there for the one surgery right before the doctor did it. But at first it was just like they had to take him in and get it drained because he was like rubbing it. However, he was moving in the wheelchair. It was like a constant thing, and he had rubbed a sore, and they would wrap it, and it would like still, it was so sad. This sore went on for years. I think it was like 3 years. It was a long time. It might have even still been there in the end, to be quite honest with you. I think it was a long time, because he kept hitting it and it wouldn't heal.
Yeah. And London, my husband suffered from chorea really bad. And I thought that was like the biggest impact for public, was that people would see that involuntary movement and instantly think he was drunk or he was on narcotics. And it impacted, like you were saying, our family so much, because Justin and Mike couldn't help that. But that chorea definitely makes people look fast and then judge instantly.
And the thing is, then they look at you, because it's not like something where they can go, oh yeah, something's definitely wrong. They look at them like something's wrong with
Right.
you,
In a negative manner.
and it's not cool. I saw a TikTok the other day. I'm just going to go ahead and mention this. Don't know who it was, but I was looking on TikTok, the hashtags juvenile Huntington's disease. And whoever it was that posted the video deleted the video, but the woman, someone recorded a woman in a casino, and she was having chorea and had Huntington's disease. And there must have been messages. So there must have been messages on there, because a lady took that video and stitched it or duetted it. And you can do that, but then the lady took the video down, so I can't even show you now. But anyway, she took it and said, I'm a nurse, and I'm almost positive that this is Huntington's disease. And for those of you that are out there saying that this woman's on meth and on crack and that she is whacked out of her mind, you need to just educate yourself before you start calling people out on that. This lady and this nurse didn't even know this woman. And I'm looking at this woman, I'm just calling her this woman in the casino, and I'm like, she definitely has Huntington's disease. It was a shame that someone busted out their phone and just,
Right.
I don't know, did it to laugh at somebody? Because I hate the accusations. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then towards the end stages of the disease, which this disease did not last long for Justin. Justin was diagnosed in 2008 with Huntington's disease, and he died in 2018. So it seemed like it was like this long journey, but when you think about it, it was like so quick, because he could still talk but towards the end stages of the disease, I mean, he eventually just couldn't even move anymore. The chorea had just slowly got worse. He eventually couldn't talk anymore. And even trying to use like the little tablet to try to talk, he couldn't even touch that. It was like his whole body just almost shut down. It's like the chorea actually started to disappear towards the end. Like his movements just started to slow, and he just sat there. The one thing that always kept me going was if I could get him to smile. And I could always get him to smile. I used to just say the dumbest things. I didn't care what they were. As long as I could get him to smile, I knew he was like still there. And that was important to me. The day before he passed, I walked out and I saw Thea in the parking lot, and Thea said, how's he doing? And I said, Thea, I can't get him to smile. And I've always been able to get him to smile, and I can't get him to smile. And I just started crying, and she hugged me. And then, like I said, he passed away the next day. So yeah, it was a long journey, that's for sure.
So Londen, you said, unlike Justin's mom, Justin knew who you guys were at the end. He was very much there.
Yeah, he was. And I think that was one of the things where when I could get him to laugh, that's probably what I was trying to get, is just to know that he was still there and he was still with me. You know what I mean? He might not have been able to say it or touch it or high five it, but I could see that he was still there. It's hard to think about the things that he went through, because it breaks my heart. Justin, whether or not we were together, it didn't matter. He was still my friend, and he was still the father of my children, and Justin never did me wrong. We just weren't compatible anymore. But that didn't mean I was going to leave his side. I was always there for him.
So my final question for today, Londen, is when you and Justin started having children, did you realize that there was a juvenile form of Huntington's disease?
I knew there was a possibility of them having it really young, but I knew that chance was really low. But it was really when Justin was diagnosed with Huntington's disease that I knew. Justin was 28 years old when he was diagnosed. And I knew from all my research of all this stuff, that's really young to be diagnosed with Huntington's disease. So now what happens if my kids have this disease? If they're going to have it really young, because Justin's CAG repeat is 59, and I'm doing all this math in my head, trying to just figure out what this means for my own family, what this means for my kids. And I freaked myself out for a long time after Justin was diagnosed, and he was scared too.
You guys stay tuned, because we are going to do shows about getting a child diagnosed, and then also this amazing knowledge that Londen has about being a caregiver and an advocate for her daughter who has juvenile Huntington's disease. The first show, because it wasn't only juvenile Huntington's disease that Londen became very familiar with. She stood by Justin's side. He was her best friend, and they had children together. And that takes a pretty amazing person to stand by someone's side through this and say, we may not be together, but you are my friend and I'm going to stand by you. And that's what you did. I think that will do it for today. So everyone, don't forget to this video, subscribe to the channel below, and ring the bell for notifications when videos like this come out.